Welcome to the Deconstructed Woman podcast, a podcast about breaking down barriers between women, exploring and sharing perspectives of each individual woman's experience, and discovering what we have in common and what makes us different. Hosted by Elisa Marie and Joji.
Welcome back to another episode of The Deconstructed Woman with Alyssa Marie and Joji. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I'm always working on, which is planning to be more productive in my 60s. I am 56, and in 6 months, I'll be 57. And so, interestingly enough, my brother, who is about a year and a half older than me, just had a birthday last week. And he sent me this random thought about the play Waiting for Godot and talking about the directionless, hopeless, helpless kind of meaning interpretation of this play. And I sent him back a text message stating, like, is this what 57 brings or 58? Sorry, because he's that much older than me. But I said, is this what 58 brings? Because it's a little dark. And he just said, no, he was just sharing this very random thought with me, which I thought was interesting. And I told him, I said, I have a different attitude and I'm really looking forward to creating a way of life in my 60s because the harder part of our life about raising kids and things is really behind us. And we're really able to focus on ourselves. And so I sent him an article which is called People Who Achieve More in Their 60s and Beyond Than They Ever Did in Their Youth Usually Practice 8 Daily Habits by Lachlan Brown. And this was published July 31st, 2024, just 4 days after my brother's birthday. And so I shared it with Alyssa Marie and just asked her, hey, could we talk about this? Because it's not a new topic, but it's always a great reminder in terms of what do we focus on to stay hopeful and positive as we get older. Because in many ways, it's the first opportunity in a long time that we as individuals can really focus on ourselves and not everybody else around us. And so Alyssa was generous and said, yes, let's talk about this again. And I just wanted her input as somebody who is much younger than me and my brother. What is it about this topic that resonated with somebody her age group so that we know that this encompasses all of us, even though we might be at different points in our life? So, Alyssa, what attracted you about this article that I sent you?
I think one of the first things is that I recently had a birthday as well. And so I have entered into my 40s. And a lot of people were asking me, how do you feel? Like, how does it feel to be 40? And I said that I felt like my 40s was the start of my kind of reestablishing myself because I felt like my 30s was for having my children and getting them started in the world. And now I get to watch them grow up and I get to reignite some of my interests and improving my self care. And so I think it's interesting that you are also saying that at 60. So I really had a very positive response to turning 40, where, I've heard some people have like midlife crisis and whatnot. I don't know if that comes at 50 or I don't know where the midpoint is at nowadays. But I know that for me, 40 seemed quite an accomplishment to get to this point and to now be turning the corner, if you will, to try some new things and to again reignite some habits that maybe had dropped off. So I thought this article is interesting because they're talking about at 60, but I feel like these are things that I could implement at 40 and still benefit long term.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that's the magic is that when these ideas start to come to you and when you start practicing them, that is really turning the corner into a better, enriching, and healthier life, whether that's interpersonal, whether it's with your family, whether it's spiritually. And in many ways, I don't think that any of these habits are things that you have to wait to 60 to do. And I wish that I had known them at 40 because then you have 20 years to practice them because they're challenging, because it's hard to incorporate them into your life at any time. I think there are things that make it easier to incorporate them at 60 because you're not competing with raising your children or different activities with school and work and spouse and all these different things. But if you're not in tune with that, your 60s are going to be a hard time to make this change. So I really feel like you're ahead of the game. And in certain ways, I was ahead of the game too, because in my 40s is when I started practicing yoga and stuff like that. And so I definitely feel, and yet it's taken me 16 years of continual practice and breaking off from it where life maybe diverted me and then I had to find my way back. And so that's just living on life's terms, right? That's just the way life goes. And so you have to figure it out. But I feel like those of us who understand these concepts definitely have a jump start to practicing good behaviors that's going to give us a more fulfilling life. And so let's just jump into it. So the first habit he talks about is embracing lifelong learning. And so what he really talks about is that there are references to learning a new skill, learning a new language, learning how to dance, otherwise, any of those kinds of specific activities. But he also talks about somebody who's open minded and wants to continue to learn throughout their life. Like it's not, oh, all my learning happened in my 20s and 30s, and now I am just close to learning. He's really talking about trying new things. I think about it for you and me, Liz. For me, starting a podcast in around 55 was something that was just really enlivened me in terms of a new skill set, learning new things, learning the technology side of it, and learning how to coordinate this very, I won't say brand new because it's been around for a long time, but brand new to me and understanding all the concepts of it. And it has really ignited me as a person and all the different things I like to talk about. And just like this happens organically, I ran into this article because I was conversing with my brother and I thought, you know what, this is a great topic for a podcast. And so now I incorporate this learning into my life one more way. And hopefully it's a value to our listeners and other people that are hearing this. But what are your thoughts about being a lifelong learner and how do you see this? Because you already have a PhD, so you're a pretty learned person. And so, how do you see lifelong learning in your 40s as are starting on your journey into your 40s today? Like, how do you see that enriching your life? And what is a low hanging fruit for you as you're dealing with your children and their learning? So, tell me about how you expect to practice this in your life now.
Yeah, we have a phrase at work, and that if you think you've learned it all, that's probably the time when you should retire. And so it's one of those things that is in the forefront of my mind that I'm always learning, that I've never gotten to the summits and now I'm done. I think that's something that's been ingrained in me from a very long time. And so because of that, I think that speaks pretty easily to me and is something that I've already incorporated. It's funny because I just recently downloaded Babbel, which we don't have a sponsorship with them, but because somebody had recommended like, hey, if you want to learn a new language, this is a really good way to go about it. And I was like, okay, great. Let's try this out. That's something that I've talked about for many years. My parents are bilingual. And so I thought maybe I should learn a new language. That was something that was on my to-do list. And I just took some action steps to just look into pricing to maybe download the app and get started on that. But I think that it's also when you're learning and you're pushing yourself to get outside the box of kind of your comfort zone, I think that you find new hobbies, you find new things to do. And I think that's exciting. And I think that excitement keeps you young too. So I think that it's something that you can do at any age. But I think as I get older, that's something that I want to incorporate. I also recently had somebody posted on Facebook in one of the mom groups that she wanted to start playing tennis again. And I thought, I have not picked up a racket since college, but why not? So I jumped in and messaged her and we set up to play tennis in a couple of weeks. I don't even have a tennis racket yet, but it was like, it's something new. It's not new. I've played it before, but not nearly in the last 20 years or so. It's one of those things where I'm just going to try it because one, it's good exercise and it's pushing me to relearn something that I lost, along the way. So I think that it really does speak to me. It's something that I want to continue to do. And I'm always learning from my kids or from other people new things. One of the things I love about this podcast as well is just that I get to learn so much from the different topics that come up because I have to sometimes I'm not sure what that means, what we're talking about, but I'm like, oh, that's a new concept I didn't know before. So I think that it's definitely something that we should all do.
And I just realized as you were talking that I've been looking into taking either a finance or an accounting class because for my job, I just thought to myself, you know what? I really feel like I could bone up on this financial analysis a little bit. And so I reached out to where I got my master's in business to see, can I take a class? What is it going to be like? And then looking at the per credit hour rate, I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to pay that kind of money. Maybe I should look into a community college or maybe deal with a score coach or something like that. And so I'm hoping to take a class. And in my 40s, when I went back from my business degree, I was avoiding economics, finance, and accounting. And now I'm thinking, you know what? I'm at a different point in my career where I really think this would be helpful. And I would like to have the foundational basis for this, and I want to learn it the way that you would learn it if you were completing an MBA. So that is something that I am looking into as well, and I'm excited about it. More excited than I would have been definitely 15 years ago when I was in my 40s. But your tennis story really comes is a very nice transition to habit number two, and that is prioritizing health and fitness. And so I think that health and fitness is something that is important all throughout life, but it is very difficult as a woman to prioritize health and fitness when you are the bearer of children, when you're a nursing mom, when you have multiple children. And there's all those other things that make it more challenging for you to be out there with a regimented fitness schedule. So, prioritizing health and fitness sometimes also comes with getting your mindset turned towards making that a priority, right? And so, that in itself can take a couple of years to do because you've got to find a way to do that, whether it's negotiating with your partner, negotiating with work, negotiating with just the things that interfere with those kinds of scheduling issues. And I think you're definitely somebody who has to negotiate a lot of those things because you're in the middle of a lot of those things I'm talking about right now. And so getting ready to play tennis and meet up with a friend who gave you that opportunity is fantastic. And I don't know if you want to talk any more about that, but what have you had to do to prioritize that in your life right now?
Yeah, I think it's really hard, especially since it is like my husband prioritizes his health and working out. He runs at least 4 to 5 days a week in the morning. And the problem when he gets back, it's time to get everybody out of the house. And so I can't do it in the morning as much as I would like to. And as our kids get older, and maybe the oldest can stay with the younger ones while we go and work out together, I think that is something that I look forward to as my kids get older, being able to prioritize that a little bit better because right now it's a balancing act and it's about trying to figure out where can I fit this in. I have a lot of home videos so I can do them at home. We have a rowing machine and I looked into getting something like a Peloton bike this year just because I was like, whatever I do, I need to be home while the kids are there and somebody needs to be with them, so it's not as simple as saying, oh, I'm going to go to the gym and work out. And I think that I have a lot of friends who can do that a little bit easier because they don't have kids just yet. But I think that it's definitely a balancing act right now. And so in my 60s, 20 years from now, my kids would all be 20 years or older. And so I would get that back. And so I look forward to that, but I'm also trying to fit it in some ways just to make sure that I don't have to start that habit at 60. I would like to have it established sooner.
Well, I will say that one of the statements that the author makes in this article is somebody that he learned from. And the statement is, my health is my wealth. It allows me to do what I want when I want. And I will say, as somebody who is approaching 60, I don't think there are any truer words than my health is my wealth. Because when you're not healthy, you really can't do what you want when you want to do it because you are limited by mobility or an injury or a physical condition or a disease state. And that is one of the scariest things. And the people that I know who are in their 60s and 70s, the ones who are struggling with mobility and things like that, are people who didn't practice a habit like this. I don't know. And I don't think it's that they're not smart people. They just took their day by day lifestyle and they didn't anticipate that, oh, yeah, in my 70s, this is going to catch up to me, or my body is going to be different and I'm not going to be as spry as I was in my 50s. And it's up to us that are younger to be able to learn from their experience and not have to learn that lesson the hard way. And so the fact that this article said that my health is my wealth, I am telling you, that is such a true statement. And it is something that we should embed into our mind right now, because when you don't have your health, you really don't have anything else. And I don't care how wealthy you are financially, without your health, you really don't have a lot more, because you will be spending your money on somebody caring for you and not on the fun trips that you thought you might do when your children are grown, or the fun adventures that you could be on. So, no truer words. And I echo that absolutely. And I've got a little bit of time to continue working on that before I hit 60. Habit number three is something that we talk about, I would say, at least once a month on this podcast, which is practice mindfulness daily. And so, mindfulness, the way he talks about it in this article, is not necessarily sitting and practicing meditation. It really is about doing that, but also living in the present, not holding on to your regrets and your mistakes, and really being able to move on past the things that have not gone well in your life. So, mindfulness in its most general frame of reference is about living in the present, focusing on today and enjoying the moment, and really being present during your daily moment with your child, with your spouse, in your home, at work, at the gym, whatever you're doing, really being present and savoring this time, whatever activity you're doing. And so it is a very easy thing to say, yeah, that's easy enough. I can do that. But it is a very hard practice to stay focused, because if you try it, you will realize quickly how often your mind goes back to something else, because our minds wander. And of course, we've talked about monkey mind in the past and how hard it is to stay present, to really walk and do a walking meditation and think about the wind and the sun on your face and the snow on your skin and all these things that are happening that are such beautiful experiences if we take the time to experience them in the moment. So, Alyssa, what do you think about daily mindfulness and how you practice that?
Yeah, I think that it's still something that I haven't solidified in my kind of habit list, if you will, but I definitely see a lot of worth in it. And it's something that I have to find. I think for me, the sitting and unless I'm doing it outside of my home, it feels like in my home, it's just always so chaotic that it's really hard. I'm not only trying to not let my own thoughts come in, but I'm also trying to shut out all the noises and the bumps and the jumps and all the things that are going on, that it's really hard to do at home. And then finding kind of a pocket elsewhere. I spend my majority of my time either at home or at work, and sometimes in the car, but I commute, I pick up my youngest two from daycare. So I have about 5 minutes before one of them is in the car. So again, for me, it's trying to find that pocket of time. But I think as I get older, hopefully those pockets open up and it's a little bit easier to integrate that. I want to do this 21-day Bible challenge where, reading the Bible for 21 days. It's like a 10-minute, probably not even that much, maybe 5 to 10 minute commitment. And I was like, I can do this. So when I wake up, like that's something that I wanted to create that habit. So that's a different version of it, but something that I feel like I can do, even though I'm fudging it a little bit because they said actually having the physical like book in your hand and I'm reading it off my phone whenever I get the chance to. So I'm still working that habit out, but I think that there is something to be said about having that quiet time, that kind of pause in your day. So that meditation or mindfulness. But then I love the idea of also integrating that into just being in the present. I think I have seen that and we've talked about it, but like in parenting, that is such a vital aspect of parenting to be able to take a deep breath and check in with yourself of what am I feeling right now before you react to your children. And that is, again, something I'm working on. It's not fully established, but it's definitely better than it was 6 months ago. But it's hard. It's hard to put in that pause and say, okay, in this moment, I'm feeling very frustrated, but let me pause and let me try to identify where those feelings are coming from and let me address what's actually happening in this moment. Because my stress and everything that's happened earlier in that day may come out in that moment if I'm not in living in the present. Otherwise, I just am reactive. So I think that this is something that probably is a skill set that needs to continue to develop for me, but it's definitely an important one.
Yeah, and the only thing that I would say is that I think this is less of it is a habit for sure, but I also think it's a discipline. And the only reason I say that is because I've been trying I thought I would use a auditory cue. So almost at the top of the hour, I would set an alarm or a ding on my phone so that whether especially when I'm at work, that at the top of the hour, I just take a moment to center myself because I want it to be more productive. And I cannot tell you how challenging that has been because I am more likely to just turn that ding off and it has become so familiar to me that it doesn't even interrupt my pattern of thought. And so I'm feeling like I don't know how you would do 10 minutes when I can't even do a minute. And that's all I really was wanting to do was a minute. And so I feel like, once again, it's an evolution and we're working on it. But I'm struggling with what I thought was going to be a very easy thing to do. And it's not turning out to be as easy as I had hoped. And so I'm wondering if it's really about a discipline to say this is important and carving out the time. And the only reason I add that 2 cents in is because it's become more challenging than I thought. And I feel like, Alyssa, that we probably will only get through the first four today, just because I know you've got some time constraints. So if you don't mind, I'm going to make this into a 2 episode podcast, two portions of it. And I think the fourth habit that Lachlan talks about is fostering strong social connections. And that I think is easier for you and I because both of us are really social individuals and we have pretty large family and social connections. And so this habit is something that is pretty much basically what it says. And I know from the Blue Zone philosophy that I adhere to, the social connections is one of the main traits of people who live into their 100-year-old plus individuals. That social connections and not being isolated in your older years is very important. And this is one of the things that is a lot nicer or easier having young children because families tend to do a lot of things together, socialize, activities, sports events, go to the pool together, go to games together if your kids are participating. So I think this is made a lot easier when you've got, I would say, social connections that are tied to your family and can be easier even with or without your children if you go out with your friends for a couple dinners or things like that. So this one is a little bit easier and this is one that we can end on that's a little bit simpler to incorporate into our busy lives. But how do you and your family incorporate social connections? Are there any unusual ways that you do that? You did mention the moms group on Facebook, which I think is a very wonderful way to do that, using social media to stay connected with people. You found your tennis partner that way and your mom's group that way. So what are some other innovative ways that you stay involved today in your current life situation?
Yeah, and I think that there's a couple of different ways. One, I see a lot of times people say, "Hey, I'd like to," like you were saying, I think with younger kids, people are like, "Oh, I want to do a play date. Who would like to join?" And I push myself to join those if those opportunities arise because I think that it gets me out of my comfort zone. And I might meet somebody. I might not. I think either way is fine. I don't go in with the anticipation of I need to make close friends because I already have a pretty good established friend group, which I established when my daughter was under the age of 1. and we have all grown up together. So my oldest is now 9. So for the last 9 years, I have developed that friend group. So I don't need to necessarily add to it, if you will. But I think that meeting new people and having new perspectives, and maybe somebody who might be an unexpected person who's going to be a really good support for me, I think that's one way that I do it. I know that when I was a little bit younger, I used to do meetup groups on meetup.com. I used to go in different things that they would hiking group or a group that was going to go swimming or whatever it was, like different meetup groups was one way that I pushed myself to get out of my comfort zone. And I found that was really helpful to because you don't know anybody there. So you're just walking into a room of strangers. And that's really how our book club started too. So I think that it's about finding ways to connect with other people with maybe similar likes or hobbies or things like that. Joining a sewing group, if that's something that you enjoy at the library. I think that there's so many ways, and people struggle with this in some ways, but I think that it's also very easy to say, hey, you know what? I have these different opportunities. Let me go outside my comfort zone. Let me push myself to do that. I think that there's incredible benefits to it, but I think that as an introverted extrovert, I definitely understand how difficult that can be because I have had many awkward moments and I think I've come into my own that I'm okay with that. But many times where I just felt like the oddball or the odd person out, but I have gotten to the point where oh, that maybe wasn't a great connection and I'll try again next time. So I think that those are ways that I manage it, but I think that it's a hard thing to do depending on your personality.
Yeah. And you know what I was just thinking, and this is like a interesting end of this conversation, is that I was ticking off all the boxes of the four things that we talked about that came out of the fact that you and I met each other at a book club. And so we didn't know each other. I was invited to this book club because it was by somebody I used to work with who's also a friend of mine. And the book club was meeting close to my home. And so she just said, hey, we're going to be in your area. Do you want to join this book club? And on one hand, there was this lifelong learning, which is habit number one, which is like reading new books and things that are outside of my comfort level. I don't like horror, suspense, mystery. Those are not my book loves. And so it definitely has gotten me to reading a wide variety of authors and genres in books. And then I think about the fact that we also have fostered strong social connections and doing something that we love when it comes to lifelong learning because you and I got connected and I thought you'd be a great person to co host a podcast with. And so you and I embarked on this journey of learning how to do a podcast. You had some experience doing it one before. I was asking for help and how do we do that? And so we got together and we started this relationship, which has become a wonderful partnership in terms of practicing all these different things. And I definitely feel like if I needed something, I could always reach out to you and get some support and vice versa, I hope. And you never know where a new activity is going to take you. And if you're open to that kind of trial and error, I always forget that you're an introverted extrovert because I think of you as an extroverted extrovert, but that's my fault because I see you as being so similar to me. But yeah, it's all about trying new things and not knowing where a relationship is going to go and just trying to see and be open, which is something that I think we share in our personalities. And so, yeah, do you have any other final thoughts? But I was just thinking how this has been a great opportunity for us to build our lives as we get older together. And I'll get there before you do, but you'll be here definitely, I think, when I turn 60. So, what a fun sort of way to combine all these different topics. Because
Yeah.
when did we start the book club? We've been in book club for several years. So, I was probably closer to my early 50s when we started in book club together.
Yeah. I think it's been at least 5 years, I want to say, but I would have to go back and look. But it definitely, I think that's a perfect, like you said, it perfectly encompasses what we've tried to do is to go outside our comfort zone, try new things. And here we are so many years later. So I have to step out. So I will let you close it out. But thank you so much. And I look forward to the continuation of this conversation in just a short while.
Sounds good. So, thank you, listeners, for participating. I hope you're getting something out of this conversation. It's not a new topic, but it's something that we always could use a reminder because the discipline for building these habits is really challenging. Please feel free to send us some feedback at thedeconstructedwoman@gmail.com or our Facebook page. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to our podcast, The Deconstructed Woman. If you liked this podcast, please share it with your friends, rate this episode, or subscribe to be notified of all new content. We want to hear from you, our listener. Do you have thoughts on the discussions we're having? Want to share topic suggestions? Or want to join us for a topic that you're passionate about? Contact us at our email address, thedeconstructedwoman@gmail.com.